Okay, so now I'm going to show you what to do if your waistband in your muslin is ending up a little bit too tight. And this would happen if you have less of an hourglass shape than the pattern is drafted for. So if you have an athletic build where you're really straight up and down, if your hips are proportionally small to your body, or if your waist is proportionally large, um, this is kind of for the rectangular or apple shaped figure. So this one is a little bit more difficult. When you're reducing size, it's really easy because you make the muslin and then you pinch out the amount that you need to pinch out. When something is too small, you kind of have to estimate how much more space that you would need. One way to do that in this pattern with your muslin is to separate it at the front where the fly would be, and kind of figure out how much you would have to add so that the side seams sit at the side of your body and it's not cutting into your back at your waist. So that takes a little bit of finagling and estimating, but for our demonstration, we're going to assume that you want to add 2 inches, which is actually quite a bit. So most of you probably won't be adding quite that much to your pattern, but we're going to go with 2 inches that you need extra. And that amount is being added to this curve right here, which is the top of the waistband. Because you've already gotten your hips to fit perfectly, we do not want to alter this area at all because this is the part that connects to the skirt. The hip measurement is right here, so we want this to remain the same. So our alterations are going to change the back waistband and specifically the top of the back waistband. So the first thing that we need to do is mark our seam allowances, because you always work on the stitch line for alterations and not on the seam allowance line, especially on curved pieces. So for this pattern, it's 1/2 inch, and I'm just using my grid here to find them. And then you can do the same over here, although this side is not going to match up as well because this pattern piece has a seam allowance and this one is cut on the fold, so it doesn't have a seam allowance back here. But just kind of mark that. Oops, I did on the wrong side. Mark that so you can eyeball it. So make sure that they're aligned on the side seam there. Give it a little piece of tape. I like to put these pieces of tape on vertically because they need to be easily removed later. And then kind of line up that side, and again put a piece of tape to hold them together. And then I just like to secure them one more time kind of in the center. So there's that. And now what we're going to basically be doing here is adding a dart here and a dart here, and then instead of normally you would close a dart, we're going to open it. So it's like a slash and spread technique. So the place where you're going to add darts is fairly arbitrary. You're just trying to distribute the width so that it's not all centered on one point. So between the tapes, so kind of right here, just going to draw a line, and then kind of right here. And because we're removing 2 inches total and we're working with half of the back, so for this side of the back we're removing 1 inch total, and now we've divided that into 2 places where we're removing width. So that's going to be a 1/2 inch here and 1/2 inch here. So to remove a 1/2 inch from each side, we're just going to mark the 1/4 inches on either side of that kind of dart line that we drew. So now that we have those, the next step is to use a pair of scissors, or I have a separate rotary cutter for paper, and I have a different one for fabric. It makes it really easy to cut patterns. You're going to slice all the way through the waistband, and then about halfway through the yoke. I kind of drew that at more of an angle, so I'm not going to follow my pencil marks there. And now it's really easy. So we need to separate these by a 1/4 inch. So I'm lining this mark up with one of the 1/4 inch markings on my grid, which might be hard to see, and I'm moving it over a 1/4 inch. And then I'm just going to tape this so it stays apart. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here. Oops, sorry, I missed that one. Yikes. Okay, start again. Move that a 1/4 inch. I didn't move this one. move that 1/4 inch there. Now we have our total of a 1/2 inch removed in the center, or widened actually. So same thing over here, move that a 1/4 inch, move that a 1/4 inch. Tape them in place. Now this one's a little bit more difficult than reducing, so you have to be very careful in this step. But what you want to do is basically tape the yoke to maintain that opening. I'm doing these horizontal because I want these pieces of tape to kind of stay pretty secure. There's that. Okay, so now that those are taped, I'm going to remove the vertical tapes that I did at the very beginning, very carefully. You might want to add another horizontal tape in here. I'm kind of just doing this by the seat of my pants to demonstrate, but best practice would be to add a little bit more tape. And then you need to lay this down on a piece of paper. And I'm going to align the center fold with the edge of the paper to make it really easy to see visually. Okay, so now when we trace around our new back waistband, you can see it's really opened up. In fact, it's almost a rectangle, which is why you can see like most people are probably not going to have to open it up that much. I'm just doing a rough outline here just to kind of show you the new shape. So there's your waistband. Has a little bit of a curve to it. You always want it to curve up a hair, so it looks like it's about 1/2 inch higher on this side than it is on this side. And then for your back pattern piece, I would also, just because we opened that up so much, I would transfer that to a piece of paper as well. You might be able to get away with just placing that on fabric, but because there's tape that's kind of in these open parts, I would put paper behind and trace that as well. And as you can see, this is also a little bit bigger, but you really want this bottom to stay just about the same so that you're not removing any width from this seam here. And there you go. Now you have a waistband and a yoke that are 2 inches total wider on your final skirt. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.